Salute Traveler, welcome back to the Charted Space Coffee Shop. This is the 8th part of my Netcast video series for character creation in Traveller 2nd Edition by Mongoose Publishing. In this part are the rules for Psionics and Psionic character creation. So, let's get to it. Psionics can be a fun but tricky element, with the potential to change the whole dynamic of a group of travelers. Should this unique result be rolled for during character creation, or a player is thinking of pursuing psionics for their traveler, all players and the referee should discuss whether or not to allow this into their game. Not only do some powers have the potential to completely trivialize plot points in a story, but for games set within Traveller's Charted Space universe, the social-political situation of psionics might change the flavor of an adventure. For example, psionics is illegal in the Third Imperium, which has led many governments within the Red Border to heavily monitor and or forcibly suppress their citizens exhibiting such potential, leading many psions to go into hiding. This is in stark contrast to the Jodani Consulate, a fully psionic culture and one that has the very structure of their society revolving around these mental abilities. There's a lot of interesting history between the Imperium and the Jodani that is the cause of this friction about psionics. I highly recommend reading the Third Imperium book in general to better understand the setting of Traveller, but check out page 96 specifically to discover how taboo led to suspicion and discovery led to the psionic suppressions. Of course, your gameplay does not have to be as black and white as this, nor does it have to take place within the borders of either of these polities. This introduction is not meant to deter players from wanting to play a psionic traveler, but is more of a note of consideration, as extra work will need to be put in for both players and the referee. If a player happens to roll Pre-Career Event 2 or Life Event 12-1 during one of their Traveler's terms, the Traveler may pause their career term here and immediately test for their psionic strength, at the cost of some credits. First, for 5,000 credits, a Traveler's psionic strength is tested to determine their psi score. Roll 2d with a negative DM for every whole term the Traveler has finished thus far in character creation. This is why a Traveler pauses their current career term, so as not to count it toward the negative DM. Write the result of this roll in the psi score box with the corresponding DM on your character sheet. If the results of the test end in a psi score of 0 or less, the Traveler has no psionic strength and cannot move on to psionic training nor attempt to enter the Psion Career. If your Traveler succeeds in their testing and receives a psi score, they may choose to immediately move on to the next step to train this newfound power, though at the cost of even more credits. For an additional 100,000 credits, the Traveler can go through training and attempt to learn each of the 5 psionic talents: telepathy, clairvoyance, telekinesis, awareness, and teleportation. To do this, the Traveler will have one attempt at a Psi 8+ roll for each talent. For each success, write the psionic talent learned at level 0 on the Traveler's character sheet in the blank lines provided under the skills section. Any failed attempts means the Traveler was unable to learn this specific talent during their time training. The formula for each talent training attempt roll will be 2d plus your psi DM plus the learning DM of the talent minus the number of previous tests that were attempted. The psionic training table on page 228 of the CRB 22 has a list of corresponding learning DMs, revealing that some talents are easier to learn than others. However, if telepathy is attempted first, the Traveler will gain this talent for free without needing to roll. Note that gaining telepathy for free is still considered an attempt. With the cumulative DM -1 for subsequent attempts combined with the learning DMs per talent, there is some consideration a player may want to weigh as they're going through their testing. A player could get the easy talents rolled first to nearly ensure gaining them, and then hope for the best for the more difficult ones. A player could also test for the harder talents first, giving them balanced rolls across the board for each attempt. Of course, there's no required order, and a player may test for each of the 5 talents how they wish. This cumulative DM -1 per training attempt will carry over a Traveler's lifetime, so always keep track of how many tests your Traveler has attempted, as they may have other chances to unlock the other talents in the future. After going through testing and training, and going 105,000 credits into debt, go back to finish up your Traveler's current career term. For their next term, a Traveler with psionics may choose to qualify for the Psion Career, which is on page 236 of the CRB 22. The Psion Career will progress exactly like any other career term, with a few extra rules. If this is your first career, you will gain the skills under your chosen assignment skill list for basic training instead of the service skill list. Psionic talents will level up just like skills do, so rolling a talent on the skill list will increase that talent level by 1. If you happen to roll for a talent that your traveler failed to gain during their psionic training, you do not get that talent for free, but instead get the opportunity to test for it again. Remember to carry over that negative DM per attempt that was accumulated during psionic training. This negative DM will continue to increase until the traveler has learned all 5 talents, though many will find that it will become literally impossible to learn at some point, as more and more rolls are attempted.
Now it's time for Side Tangents with Rex.
Much like my complaint for part of the parole rules for the prisoner career being 4 pages away from the actual career material, Mongoose did the exact same thing here for the Psion Career. There's a blue text box with career-relevant information on page 229 of the CRB22 that really should belong right before the Psion Career information on page 236. This is a little more egregious than the parole rules location. There's more information here relevant to the Psion Career that needs to be at hand when going through a term cycle. Again, admittedly, it's not really that much to get worked up about. It's just that this was laid out perfectly in the original 2016 CRB, so having this point of reference just bugs me is all. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm sure there are plenty of referees and players just like me who are very left-brained when it comes to information formatting. Anyway, side tangent over. Each of the 5 psionic talents has their own list of powers that the traveler will gain full access to if they've learned that talent. I would recommend having pages 229 through 235 of the CRB22 either bookmarked, printed, or written separately to have all the powers ready at hand to use in-game. Each power will have a description of what it does, the check difficulty, the time it takes to activate, the reach, and the psi cost if used successfully. During gameplay, a traveler will use their psionic powers much like making a skill check, but with a few differences. Unlike skill checks, each power has its own specific target number for the traveler to roll for, instead of the referee determining the difficulty. I will describe this more in my upcoming Skills and Tasks series, but follow the normal conventions for skill checks when you use a psionic power. Roll 2d, place your psi DM, plus the psionic talent level. Compare your result to the power's target number to determine success and effect. A traveler's psi score not only represents the strength of their psionics, but it also represents how much power they have available to use. Much like physical scores as hit points, psionic powers will reduce a traveler's psi score as they use them during gameplay. If a traveler is successful in using a power, their psi score is then reduced by the psi cost of the power. If the power check fails, only reduce the traveler's psi score by 1 point. A traveler's psi score will naturally regenerate back by 1 point per hour in-game after the last power that was used. Should the psi cost of the power ever reduce a traveler's psi score below 0, that difference is then applied as physical damage to the traveler. A psionic traveler with a current psi score of 0 cannot attempt to use any of their powers. Each psionic power has a max range that it can be normally used within. This distance may be increased by 1 range band at double the power's cost, or increased by 2 range bands at quadruple the power's cost. You can find the psionic range table on page 229 of the CRB22 to determine the exact distances from the range band description on each power. If talked about ahead of time with your referee, a traveler may attempt to qualify for the Psion Career in their first term. Before qualifying, have the traveler go through testing for their psionic strength and training, as well as gaining the associated debt for it. For another story avenue, on page 33 of the Traveler Companion, there's a pre-career option called Psionic Community, which allows for testing without the 105,000 credit price tag, as long as you can qualify.
Lucky.
After character creation and sometime during gameplay, any psionic talents that the traveler may want to attempt to learn again, the referee could incorporate into the story in some way. Perhaps the traveler could seek a psionic master of that talent to spend time with them training, or the referee could simply allow the traveler to test again as a reward for completing adventures. The CRB22 describes that training takes 4 months to complete, which is the equivalent of 2 study periods for training in a new skill. I would personally rule in my games that these study periods must be trained with an instructor, but this is up to every referee's discretion. You can learn more about study periods in my future video on post-career education. This is Rex with the Charted Space Coffee Shop. If you like the videos, do me a solid and hit any and all those beautiful buttons down below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can head on over to the Nuclear Sunrise page on Ko-fi.com and buy my turn producer a cup of joe. Godspeed, Traveler, and I'll see you in the next one.